When my son took his life, it'll be 12 years this month at the end of March. And when he took his life, I wanted to die with him. I didn't want to keep going. I found myself lying upon his grave, begging, pleading, wishing, whoever, whatever took my son, please take me too.
Welcome to Onward Live, a live stream focused on encouraging you to create a life you love living now. Let's go beyond success to significance. Being clear on our why is crucial. It requires doing the inner work, finding ourselves, getting to know ourselves, embracing our inner child, shedding social conditioning, and letting go of perfect. We know obstacles make us stronger. We can dream big and take action. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. I invite you to tune in every week and engage with me and my inspiring guests. Invite your friends. Let's make time for what matters most in our lives. Let's move onward together. Tonight, I'm interviewing Cathleen Elle, and she and I talked. We were introduced by somebody neither of us can remember who introduced us, but we hit it off right away. And I said, I got to have you on my podcast. And we finally are doing it tonight. So Cathleen is a #1 international best-selling author. She's wrote the book Shattered Together, Women Who Rise. And she's also a transformational coach and a speaker, and she's a certified success coach, and she's a healer. And she's also a co-host of a podcast, Beyond Your Best Plan podcast. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Tim. Thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm getting ready to bring Cathleen in. I don't know. I guess I went live last week, but it feels like it's been like 3 or 4 weeks since I went live. I don't know why, but anyway, let's see. I'm going to bring Cathleen in right here. There she is. Hi, Cathleen.
Hi, Emily, and all the guests. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So good to be with you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Cathleen. I think we bonded because we both had kind of a real tragic loss in our lives. And that's what we started talking about initially when we met. I had recently lost my kid's father, and your son, and from suicide. And I really want to learn. And I know there's quite a few people that are going to listen to this later that might be watching now that want to know, how do you keep going in light of that loss? And Shannon is watching. So thank you, Shannon. Yeah. How do you keep going in light of that loss?
It is not easy. My first tip for our guests is take one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, focus on your breathing, and keep moving forward. Don't give up, because when my son took his life, it'll be 12 years this month at the end of March. And when he took his life, I wanted to die with him. I didn't want to keep going. I found myself lying upon his grave, begging, pleading, wishing, whoever, whatever took my son, please take me too. And that was a few months after, where my daughter was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in Vermont. And I really had nobody with me, and people weren't responding in the way that I wanted them to respond. And I just felt like the whole world was overwhelming and just completely overwhelming. But as I was laying there on the grave with my son, I just got this clear message out of nowhere. It was like a voice, but not a voice. It just said, if this happened in your life, you're meant to do something with it. So now do it. And so based on my history, I was a politician. I'd served for the governor. I was a lobbyist. I had the contacts, the media outlets. I had enough public awareness that I could use my voice to help educate people about suicide. And so that's how my journey started at that moment, was that I started to educate people about the signs of suicide, the language around suicide. And so it gave me a little bit of a purpose to keep moving. And then eventually,
Yeah. I mean, you took your pain and you turned it into a passion.
Exactly.
To help others.
Eventually, I realized I needed to do my own internal healing from all the traumas in my life. Now, I like to share that my life is a little bit like a strawberry rhubarb pie. I've got a lot of sweetness and a lot of bitterness. And so how was I going to live my life primarily in the sweetness of what life gives us? And the bitterness included sexual, physical, emotional abuse as a child. It included being shot at by my birth father before I was 6. There were some pretty traumatic events in my life. What I realized when Logan took his life, that that particular trauma shattered every wall that I had in regards to all the other trauma. I
I
thought
was
I
going
had
to ask,
dealt with,
had you dealt with any of that prior to his passing?
so I thought I had. I thought I had done the self help books. I had really drove myself like I was a doer, a doer, a doer. I came
Mhm.
out of that to be pretty prominent in my community. So the community, from the outside, I looked like I had it all together. On the inside, I was completely destroyed. And so I was able to start stepping into my own healing journey, doing PTS treatment, healing modalities, became a master of a healing modality. I did personal development with Jack Canfield. I really started to delve deeper because what I realized is that each time I faced the pain, I was able to create a new story around that pain. And it was no longer pain, it was wisdom and knowledge that I get to carry forward and share with others.
Wow. That
Yeah.
so did you do that all on your own? I mean, I heard you say you worked with Jack Canfield, but did you work with lots of different coaches and healers and
Yes. I
sounds
worked with therapists, I worked with coaches and healers, I worked with plant medicine. So for those of people who don't understand what plant medicine is, the indigenous community uses plants to help people go within. So the key is no matter what modality you use, no matter where you go, going inward instead of outward. Stop looking on the outside for your fixes and know that you have to go inward to face the fears, the limiting beliefs, the blocks that are in your body. And you can do that with coaches, with healers, with leaders, people who know how to hold your hand as you're walking through it. Because the key, in addition to that, is that you have the power. You could heal just like I can, but you're the one that has to step into it with the commitment of facing it.
yes. I was working through something with my counselor yesterday or something, and I'm just like, I looked at her and I said, look, this is really hard. Why am I doing this? I just want to stop. Did you ever feel that way?
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
oh my God,
So many times.
it's so freaking hard.
Yeah, so many times I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I already dealt with this. I don't want to go back there. And each time I thought that, because it, especially early on, from the moment I found out. So the important piece here is the moment that you experience a traumatic event in your life is no longer the same. It is never going to be the same as what it was the second before. And how you incorporate that into your life is how you're going to live your life. And there are times from up until 6, 7 years, I was like, you take one step forward, you fall back two. You take 5 steps forward, you fall back three. Every single time, I felt like it was a little bit like a wave. I like to use the ocean analogy because an ocean, if you fight against the wave, you're going under, you're drowning. You
Yes.
have to go with the wave of your emotions and actually be in it, allow it, feel it. We often mask what we don't want to feel. We shove it
Well,
down, we mask it with work, we mask it with exercise and food and drugs and alcohol and all other kinds of ways to mask it, or personal development courses or whatever it is. We can mask how we feel, and we have to
yeah,
face
and
how
you
we
mentioned
feel.
doing. That was my life. do. One of my guests said, you keep do, you turn into do. And that happened to me. So my word this year is being. I just want to pay more attention to who am I being while I'm doing, and why am I doing some of these things? Could I stop? Is it because I should? Those are all things we need to look at. I was at a conference last week. I was speaking at a diversity, equity, inclusion event with the Navy. And it was so interesting because none of us had met each other. And we all talked about the importance of looking at ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we can say, well, when this changes, or that person, if I got a different boss, or when this happens or that happens, really, you've got to look at yourself.
Over the last 2 years, we've had disaster after disaster after disaster after disaster, and we can get caught up in that disaster and again, mask ourselves with all of the other fear, or we can say, hey, how can I show up in this world? How can I be the best light as possible in this world? And by getting caught up in all of the turmoil and the drama and the negative of that, you just perpetuate that. And so when you actually work on yourself and it's not really about working on yourself, it's really facing that life is a journey, grief is a journey, healing is a journey. So there's never a destination. So every time you look too far out into the future, you're creating anxiety. And if you're living in the past, you're creating depression. So why not be in the present? There's a reason why it's called the present for a reason, that it is the present. Yeah.
Yeah. I need a haircut, and I can't blame it on COVID. I wonder how many other things I'm not going to be able to blame on COVID now. Before I just, I need a haircut, but I haven't been out because of COVID. I don't have an excuse right now.
Well, you look great to me, so
I love your hair.
Worries about that.
Curls in your hair. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell us about
Logan. Was and is such a big part of my life. He was 19 when he took his life. He was a doll. Like, you can see, if those who are watching live, you can see the smile on my face. He was gregarious. He was sweet. He was kind to everyone. He was athletic, and he was a pleaser. And now, as I look back, he struggled with his mental health for a few years, and many of us as teenagers, as moms, we think it's just puberty or their hormones, or you don't know what's really happening. But he struggled for a while, and we did the best we could to help him. But he just turned to things that would mask his pain, and eventually just said, I can't do this anymore. And it was really tumultuous for a while. What I haven't shared here is when Logan transitioned, he wasn't speaking to me, and he actually wrote a note saying he didn't want me at his service. And so when I say, and I didn't find that out for a month, the note. And thankfully, I look back now, and I'm like, thankfully, I didn't know that. And so where I could at least get through the services and all the things that I had to do. But I thought I had hit my lowest of the low. And then when I found out about that note, I projected downward even faster and further. And today I can look at it as like, the poor boy just did the best he could with where he was, and the pain he was in, he just couldn't take it any longer. And there are other ways. What I want to share with everyone, there are other ways. That is not the answer. And yet that is something that I have to live with. What I can be grateful for today is that he helped me move through my trauma. He is assisting millions of people from his one action by me being and doing what I do. And he continues to guide me. He's here with me. Energetically, they never go away. I mean, science energy doesn't go away. It's the body that dies, and there is a grieving process in which we have to go through and missing the body. And yet we get to figure out and tune in and feel the energy around us and know the messages that are coming in. In the past, I would have totally ignored that message that I received from whatever that was. I would have ignored that. But I was more aware and more just completely, my walls were shattered. So I was able to hear that, and I heard it differently. What I did was continued the pattern of do, 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 do until I couldn't do it anymore. I started speaking out with the media. I raised a bunch of money for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I was out there at the detriment of myself, which today I know that was a pattern that I had created, is that I put everyone else's needs ahead of my own, even though I had a voice inside me saying, this isn't the path that you should go. And I still did it anyway. So I've learned a lot, and I'm able to share that with others as well.
What I've learned is I've learned about how to listen to that voice, and how to notice when it's there. And I think, I don't know what you say about this, but I think, I lived a lot in my head, meaning kind of like the thinking, the analytical side of my mind. And I didn't really use the right side, which is more like the empathy circuitry and stuff. And when something came up, like from the right side, like my intuition or gut feel, I might have overridden it at times. I can't think of too many specific examples, but I might have overridden it, like, well, the data says this, or I should do that, or this is the best thing. Maybe people do that. Maybe we do that because we hate our jobs, but I can't leave because I should stay because I have health care. But maybe there's other options. So maybe that's just an example of, I think there were times when I wanted to make a change in my life and I didn't do it, not based on I didn't do it. My intuition was telling me to do something different, and I ignored it.
Right. And that comes from early programming, whether it's programming as a child from 0 to 8, or programming from other lifetimes or ancestors. I mean, again, I may be way out there for some of the audience, but the fact is we carry our DNA 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So think about the programs that were programmed in your mother and in your father when they were children. And then you're taught from what they know. And so I have a different perspective today. When my father shot at us as children, my mom put my sister in the bathtub with her and me between the toilet and the wall in the bathroom to protect us. In that moment, at 3 years old, my brain said, what about me? I'm separated from my mom and my sister, and I have my father shooting at us. So I'm like, what about me? So there was a program that was created at the age of 3 or 4 years old. And then I continued to perpetuate that program. I continued to put myself in places. Now, this isn't about blame or shame or guilt, but I will tell you that is what is programmed inside me, or was programmed inside me, was blame, shame, guilt, unworthiness, unlovable, all of those. And so I repeated patterns of, I've been married 3 times. I've been baptized as many times as I've been married, which is, I was constantly seeking on the outside to feel whole on the inside.
No,
it never did it work.
I've been married 3 times too. And divorced 3 times.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. And divorced 3 times. And for full disclosure, I haven't dated in 4 years. So that's or 5 years. In 5 years. In 5 years. It's been 5 years. But that's because I consciously chose. So this is the key. Again, I consciously chose to say, because of the teachings that my beautiful son gave me, is that this is not working. How am I going to get to the root cause of that block inside me, to reprogram that and create a new story around that, so where I can change that pattern? And so all of the awarenesses that I've been able to come up with has just freed me. And so I have clarity. I'm calm. I feel connected to the universe. I feel confident that I can trust my inner voice. And so it's reprogramming. Like, I want to go back to the story of not good enough with that being shot at by my dad. It's like today I can call him my dad. For years I called him Gordon. When he died, me not talking to him. So the point I want to make is as I started to reprogram and become aware of how they were and how they were taught and what they went through. If we could see the people who I'm going to put in air quotes done us wrong as children, which they really haven't,
Yeah.
if we could see them as young children and put ourselves in their position, we can hold so much more compassion. If the best that my dad could do was to shoot at me and be an alcoholic and abusive, if that was the best he could do, can you imagine what kind of life he lived to
Yes.
be able to be the life he was being, the man he was being in that moment? I
That's
have
what I
such
told
a
my
different
kids a lot
perspective.
about their dad too. It's like he loves you in the way that he can, and you
Exactly.
understand how he grew up. And same thing, I was talking with somebody about something that my father had said to me a long time ago, and it has to do with the pattern that I repeat. And they wanted me to get angry at him, and I'm like, I can't. I
No.
can't get mad because that was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. And he was saying that based on what had happened in his life and what he thought was going to happen to me if I made a particular decision. I
Mhm.
can't blame him. I'm not going to be mad at him. He was, all parents, I think, really do the best they can. I don't know.
I agree completely, and what I might say, and I don't know the circumstances around that particular story, Emily, but for me, I didn't get mad. I had most of my life, I didn't get mad, but when I did get mad, watch out because it would just take a feather and it was bad. What I've even to this year, I went and participated in Iboga, which is a fairly strong plant medicine that's pretty direct. And what I realized is that I have not really felt in my body, like allowed myself to feel emotions in my body. I've thought about the emotions.
Me too. Yeah, I don't.
I've thought about them,
Yeah.
but I haven't felt them because it's a safety mechanism from as a child because I wasn't safe to feel. Because if I cried, I got in trouble. If I yelled, I got in trouble. If I was quiet, I got in trouble. Like there was whatever I did, it wasn't right. So the reprogram. So we come into this world knowing, like we come into this world as infants, as toddlers, knowing. And then we're reprogrammed by the programs of society, of schools, of parents, of our environment. There's a reprogramming happening.
Yeah.
And so now it's again reprogramming back to the knowing and shedding those walls of the fear of feeling your emotions. And I can't value it enough to say that in order to live differently, we have to move through the emotions that we're hiding and that we're suppressing and unwilling to face. Because
Yeah.
that's what's keeping us shackled in the patterns.
Yeah, and I'm still working through that. I've gotten a lot better in 3 years, but I'm still working through that. Yeah, I too, I think it's the pleaser in us. I don't get angry, but so I've learned in one of these in my coaching certification program, in this particular one, it's core energy
Mhm.
coaching, and we learn about their 7 energy levels, and levels 1 and 2 are catabolic and pull you down kind of, and they're not good or bad, they're telling you something, right? So when
Right.
I am what where I'm usually in like energy, when I'm in energy level 4, which in this case is helping other people. I sometimes don't set boundaries. So I'm helping. And then I get stressed and feel resentful because who's helping me? Whatever. And then I go down, I don't go to energy level 2, which is anger. I go to energy level 1, which is withdrawal. And I would
Right.
just withdraw and not say anything and just feel stressed and just maybe sleep for a weekend. That when that happens now, I'm more aware, and that's telling me something. That
And that's how I react. And I think it's the pleaser in us. But
Yeah.
now understanding it and knowing, oh, you're an energy level 1, Emily, and it's telling you something. You're not setting boundaries. Or maybe if I'm an energy level 5, which is the energy where you just are like, life is awesome. I see all these possibilities. And that's my restless saboteur. I get all excited about all these possibilities. And I'm like, oh, overwhelmed. Go to energy level 1.
Yeah. And so it's so interesting. So I love what you're saying because there's different ways of saying it.
Yeah.
And I love how you're sharing. So I don't look at it as boundaries. I know exactly what you're saying. And I know,
Mhm.
and most people see it as boundaries. I don't see it as boundaries.
I just
Now I
see
see it
it
as,
as all great
now I
things.
see it as, how am I caring for myself in this moment? Because
Yeah.
if we're not caring for ourselves, no one else is going to. We talk about the analogy of the cup is half full or half empty. Well, there's another piece here. The cup can be full and serve from the overflow, because you don't want your marriage to be half in or half out. You want them to
Right.
be 100% in, and
Right.
then the overflow is where you create from. And so I love to see it as, okay, if I'm feeling extremely exhausted after being with someone for 10 minutes or an hour, I'm like, okay, what was that about for me? Am
Yeah.
I
See?
exhausted
You
because
look
I'm
at
tired?
yourself. You're not
Exactly.
blaming that person like that person wears me out. You're like, what is it about me that that person wears me out?
What? Right. And so what is this person still in alignment with me? And if not, that's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means like you're heading in a different trajectory. And that's why it's so important to listen to your body, because your body is constantly talking to you. It's constantly talking to you. And so when your body feels exhausted, stop and ask yourself the question, is this exhaustion mine? You're going to get an answer just like that. If it says yes, then okay. So where am I over serving? What about this particular conversation or this particular situation? If someone's constantly complaining, and I'll just say complaining,
Yeah.
um, and you feel exhausted afterwards, check in to say, okay, is it in both of ours highest and best to continue this relationship like this? And if not, it doesn't mean you have to get rid of the relationship. It means you get to show up differently. So you get to show up and say, you know what? Today, let's try focusing on what makes us the happiest or brings joy to our lives, or ask questions to bring the playfulness and the curiosity out versus sitting there and listening to that over and over and over again. Or if someone drains you, how much are you giving? How
Mhm.
much are you giving? And what are you getting back? Because any relationship is 100% both of you, not just one, which is a new practice for me. It's a very new practice for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very foreign to me. No, just kidding. I mean, yeah. Oh, wow.
And it's a practice. So
Yeah.
when you trip up and you find yourself in that space, you say, "Oh, interesting. Thank you for reminding me." And
It
step
takes,
back
so
into, yeah,
when you're busy doing, you don't notice any of that stuff.
exactly. 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 Yeah,
So
it's amazing. It's
yeah, instead of
amazing.
fighting with the wave, now you're like surfing through life, right?
Yeah,
And when
yeah,
you start to feel like a little uneven, you notice it.
yeah.
You're more
And
aware. You notice it.
when I start to go under the water, I let myself go under. I don't fight it. I let myself go under. If I have an emotion pop up, it's been 12 years since Logan's transition. I'm in a really great space with knowing he's with me. And there's still times that I get emotional talking about it. I let myself feel what I'm feeling. And then I remind myself, like, okay, is that an old emotion or is that a now emotion? And I just deal with it differently.
Mhm. And I wanted to ask you about your books because you've written, well, it looked like you were a contributing author on 2.
I'm
Is that
actually a
right?
contributing author on 4, 5 now.
Hyperachiever
Um,
too, are you?
yeah, maybe.
But you wrote the
Yeah.
book Shattered Together, A Mother's Journey from Grief to Belief.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, it is absolutely one of the most humbling processes I've ever been through. And if you take a look at the book, you can get it on Amazon or on my website. But if you take a look at the book, on the front, you'll see that there's a shattered heart, down the middle. Well, that profile, that kind of looks like a lightning bolt, is the profile of my son's face. So I didn't write the book alone. I had help from his spirit, from the energies above, and so many other people helped me out. But the book is inspiring, it's a memoir, and it's self-help. And each chapter, it has a little story. It tells you what grief is about, loss in general. So for me, the stories are about my son's loss and how that impacted my life. And it also could be any kind of loss. You could lose a job and have the same emotions.
Yeah.
You could lose your home, like there's all kinds of things that could happen.
Your
So
pet.
yeah, exactly. The threat of your health. I just listened to your last podcast with Lori. The threat of health is a loss of how you used to know life. It's no longer the same.
Right.
So the book tells you about how we expect people to show up, and how you need to ask. It tells you the process of grief that other books don't tell you. It's not the typical, you have 5 stages of grief and this is what happens, because to me it is a journey and it always will be. But then it gives you a daily practice or a weekly practice or annual practice, how at the end of each chapter, based on what I share. So there's a little story, there's how I approached it, and then there's a practice at the end of each of the chapters. So you could read it from the cover to cover, or you can open up the book and read a story in the book. So
I
yeah.
noticed you said, how we expect people to show up, right? Because
Mm.
I think that, can you go into some more?
Oh, for sure. I'll give you this one. A story is that I was dating a wonderful man for 5 years. It was a long distance relationship, and he was close to Logan when Logan transitioned. And so he really helped me during the service. But after that, I found that he didn't shed a tear. I wasn't being held. There were certain things that I needed from him that I wasn't getting. And I tried having a conversation, but it was too hard. I mean, at that moment, I didn't know how to have a conversation that was healthy in the way of expressing what I needed. And we ended up breaking up. We ended up just separating. And years later, we had a conversation because I called to apologize in the way that I broke up with him, because I just couldn't fight with something else. I just didn't want another fight.
Mhm.
So I called him up and we've had conversations, and I had asked him, I told him what I was feeling, and I'd said, I don't understand how you couldn't cry. You cried when your friend died a month later, but you didn't cry with me when Logan transitioned. And he's like, I did. I just didn't do it in front of you. I cried in the showers. I cried on my way home. I cried when you left, And so the importance of that story is that we expect people to show up the way we want and need without telling them.
Mhm.
And it's so important, especially when you're in the middle of grief or trauma, that you express what you need, because no one else knows what you need. And a lot of people think that they're protecting you and taking care of you by not bringing your loved one up, by not crying in front of you, by not asking you what you need. They
Wow.
think they're protecting you, but in fact, it's just hurting even more. So if you did one thing out of this interview and you only got one thing here, my encouragement to you would be ask for what you need.
That's really good advice. Shannon says, any tips for spouses of those who are enduring grief?
Absolutely. That would be the first thing, is to, thanks, Shannon, for asking that. It would be that. It would spend time with that person, or offer to spend time with that person. Actually, sit and breathe with them. Ask them to share a story in which they found to be fun about their loved one. Ask them to talk about them. ask them what they miss most about their loved one. Now, this could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be it could be a parent. What's your most favorite memory? And then just go, grab them and go for a little walk. Just even if it's just around the block. You know, there's a story in the book in Shattered Together that addresses that as well. But there's many tips in the book that you can, and also on my website.
And tonight I asked you, tell us about Logan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I have interviewed, several moms, and I know several moms who have lost their children to drug overdose. And I just know how much they love their kids and how they want to talk about them, and how when you ask, their eyes light up. And, just because he's not here in his body doesn't mean he's not here, and doesn't mean that you don't want to talk about him anymore.
I so appreciate that, Emily. There's a lot of people are afraid to, because they don't want to upset the person who is grieving. But you would never make a person that's grieving upset to ask about their loved one. I'd love to share, like, his prankster. He was a prankster, and he still does things today that where he could I share a story of what he did when I was?
To hear one, yeah.
So I was elected for 8 years as a representative, and I ultimately decided that I was going to run to be a senator. And the person I was running against, my son didn't like at all. She had been in the Senate for 12 years. She was the chair of appropriations. She was well known. And so it was almost the time of the election. Maybe it was 3 weeks. I can't remember the exact time, but it was very close to the time of the election. And at the time, my last name was Voyer, which was my son's name as well, Logan Voyer. And my daughter is Ashley Voyer as well. And at the time, there was vote for Bartlett, is what there were signs on our neighbors' lawns that were voting for Bartlett. So I get up one morning and I noticed that my bumper stickers had decreased substantially. And I'm like, that's odd, but I didn't say anything. So I was taking Logan and his friend to school. And I go down over the hill where the neighbor was, and there on the vote for Bartlett sign was the bumper sticker, vote for Voyer, over the Bartlett. I was, oh my gosh, who did that? Oh my gosh, they're going to think I did that. And of course, my mind was just it was just going crazy. And I look in the rearview mirror and he is smirking like crazy. I'm like, Logan Anthony Voyer, did you do that? And he goes, well, I can't stand that. Beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, you can't do that. So I had to, but it's the creative mind he had, and how he was such a prankster. He was so much fun. And he still is today. There's certain things he does today that I'm like, okay, Logan. Yeah. Well, there'll be, I can't think of it. I mean, I can't think of a story right off the top of my head, but so when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, he knows that I like to drive fairly fast. And so I was driving from Vermont to Charlotte, and it was at night, and this car gets in front of me and starts to go really slow. And I had the road rage thing going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to get someplace so I can sleep. And so, literally 2 miles down the road is a cop. And on this license plate of the car that slowed me down was the number 33. And the number 33 was Logan's sports number. So his basketball number, yeah. So there are certain things he does you can't make that up.
Yeah,
you just can't make that up. Yeah.
You can't make that up. Yeah. So Shannon, you had answered her question earlier. She said, thank you for your advice. My boyfriend's having a hard time with his mom's death, and he kind of shuts everyone out.
Yeah, Shannon, really one of the things that I might encourage you is to understand it's going to take a lot longer than you expect or want it to. for him to move through this, because society suggests that within 3 months you should be able to move on and everything's fine, but that's not how it happens. And it's just a societal programming. I'm not saying that that's where you are, but just wanted to share that. The other thing is ask him what he needs, because he probably doesn't know. And then you can just say, I want you to know I love you. I want to be there for you. And I don't know what to do. And so I'm going to need your help in order for me to help you. Yeah.
Love that.
And, during holidays or her birthday or any other celebration that or Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a good one that's coming up right off in May. Offer to make her favorite dish. Offer to put on the table one of her favorite items that he has, and then ask what his favorite memory. Now I'm kind of looking up and over. I'm just getting this information from ask him what his favorite memory with her is. And then talk about it. And don't try to fix it. That's the other thing. Don't try to fix it. Listen. Sometimes the best thing to do is to just listen.
Yep.
I hope that's helpful, Shannon.
So yeah, change that's helpful. It's definitely helpful for even me with helping my kids through what they've been going through. But back to suicide, like what is your message about suicide?
Well, my message is suicide's not the answer. It's just not the answer. It causes, if anybody's thinking about suicide, it just causes more pain. And I know that you want to get rid of your pain, but it just causes more pain. The other thing for suicide is asking if someone is considering taking their life is not going to encourage it. It could actually prevent it. It may not, but it could actually prevent it. And AFSP.org, so American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.org, has a great list of things to ask and then what to do from that point. So if you were to ask if someone's considering to take their life, if they said yes, he would say, do you have a plan? If they said no, okay, what can I do to help? I think that we should go talk to a professional. And if you're concerned for their life, don't leave them alone. And calling 911 to have them get services. They may be mad at you, but at least you have a live friend or family member that's mad at you versus one that's not there. And then you left with the guilt that's left behind. And you can prevent the feeling of suicide. You can prevent depression. You can prevent anxiety. I have a true gut knowing of that. Like I have seen it over and over with my clients where they have felt depressed or full of anxiety. And as they started to face what they were most scared to face, and they started to feel through that, their entire world shifted. If you don't see it in me, I can promise you I worked with a military or a first responder who had served overseas a few times, who was a law enforcement officer and a responder, a fire department, I believe. Can't remember the third, but definitely another type of first responder. And he had a lot of trauma in his head. He had a lot of fear, and his brother also took his life when he was a teenager. And so he had a lot of anxiety going on. And by the time we got done working together, he started to go do post-traumatic stress treatment, and his entire world shifted. Wow. He no longer had the anxiety he was stuck in before. So he could sleep at night.
How long did that take work? I mean, I know it's probably different for everybody, but
it took a few months for him to start sleeping better, but then it took another few months for him to step into the post-traumatic stress therapy. That's intense. And when you're facing the intense feelings he was facing, that's intense. It will take some time. And then he also did a couple of the regenerating images and memory, the healing modality that I'm a master in now. He did a few of those sessions. He did 2, I think. And he's one of the people who has a testimonial on my website. He's like, my life changed because of what I helped him to start to see that he doesn't have to live in the pain. You do not have to live in the pain. You are totally being ruled by the pain that you're hiding. All those limiting beliefs and blocks that are stuck in your body, you can shift it. If you're ready to rise from the ashes of grief or loss, then step into it, because you can do it one step at a time. And don't worry about how long it is, because every step you take, you start to feel better.
Yeah. Well, how would, if you have someone has a friend that is saying, my son passed away and my mom's this way. And, it's just, now's not the right time for me to get help. All these things are happening to me. I mean, how do you help somebody that's in that situation realize that there is another option?
That's one of my hardest lessons, I will say, Emily. Yeah, because because we know the feeling to live differently, we want the world to know that.
Mhm.
The fact is, we're all on our own journey and we have no ability to make them see something different. What
Yeah.
we can say is, I would love for you to feel what I feel. And if you're ready to step into it, I will hold your hand along the way. I will be your biggest advocate, but I can get you in contact with a person that can help you.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
encourage them, and then let go of the attachment on what they do with it.
Mhm.
The only thing you have control over is yourself. One of Jack's formulas is E plus R equals O, which I lived by before I knew him. And yet when he said it, it was like, of course, this is the way it is that there's events in your life and your response equals the outcome of your life. The only control that you have over any piece of that formula is your response or your reaction. Because how you respond or react to any event in your life is how you're going to live your life. It's the outcome.
Yep.
So be aware of your response and reactions. And if you're not happy with your own response and reactions, check in with yourself and see if you're ready to shift that.
Yeah.
And if you are, take the steps to do so.
Yeah. What are the steps to do so?
Contact a coach. I would love to say connect with me.
Yeah.
However, there's me and there's thousands of me. So it doesn't have to be me, but connect with a coach. Get in touch with an energy healer. For me, I'm an intuitive coach and a healer. So someone who has the expertise to help you walk through your emotions and reprogram your story at the same time as helping you to take new steps, I think it would be helpful for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
So
would
let
say.
me ask you a question. When you were talking about Logan earlier, you kind of alluded to how do you know, because teenagers act this way, whatever. So what do you recommend to somebody who is a parent of a teen who's kind of staying in their room a lot, especially through COVID, all these things that these kids are going through?
Yeah.
How do you know that it's really serious versus just a normal teenager reaction?
Communication. So communication's key. Don't be afraid to ask what's happening. And then pay attention to, are they giving away their prized possessions? Do you hear them talking about, well, I don't know why I bother to live? Or, bringing up things they wouldn't normally bring up. If their friend circle starts to shift drastically and quickly, if their friends change, there's something happening. If they're starting to participate in things that they didn't participate in, drinking, pot, whatever it is, dangerous explorations, well, I'll get back to that story in a moment, or if they isolate themselves more,
Yeah. Well,
or if their sleep patterns off, like they're sleeping all the time or they're not sleeping at all, or they have major outbursts on a regular basis. Hormones are hormones and there are outbursts, but it's not always.
so what if you try talking about it and they're like, I'm fine, and they won't talk about it?
Well, one of the things I might say is, I'm concerned for your mental well-being and I could be way off, and I hope I am. So it's not about accusing. It's really about having an open dialogue. Listen, I love you with all my heart, and I would do anything I can to make it better for you, but I can't do that unless you talk with me. And so I'm concerned for your life. Have you ever considered taking your life? I asked that question to Logan, and he was shocked. He was like, how'd you know? And I'm like, I'm your mom, Logan. I'm your mom. I know, you know? And so we had a conversation about that. I'm not telling you that you will prevent it, but you will have a better chance of preventing it if you have the conversation than not. One of his friends told me after he transitioned that Logan really started to take some pretty risky actions. Like he was going to jump into a fenced in area where there were pit bulls that were pretty aggressive pit bulls. So he was taking risks that were out of the norm for him.
Yeah.
And so they're holding guilt. His friends are holding guilt because had they known, they would have said something. So my role is, whether it's mental health or suicide prevention or just good old emotional health and living well, is to address the issues that are inside people's bodies and their minds. Because it's a tripod. It's our body, mind, and soul. It's a tripod. Our soul is our heart, really, our heart. And our head, we have a brain for a reason. So you can use both your head and heart, and you have to care for your body. So you have to pay attention to all three.
Yeah. How old was your daughter when Logan transitioned?
Ashley was 13 months older than him. And so she was 20. She had just turned 20. And he had just turned 19 in January. And they were best friends. Ashley and Logan were what I would call twin flames, not in a sexual way. It was like they came in this world together. They did everything together. And just the year before he took his life, my daughter had gone to college. And so in her mind, there's some guilt about abandoning her brother. Or there was, I don't know, I don't believe that there is today, but there was at the time that he transitioned. And so she shared with me one time which just touches my heart every time I think about it. She shared with me, she's like, Mom, I have to learn how to walk all over again. I've never walked without my brother. Like, I don't remember life without my brother. So she had to pick up every piece that she's ever had and she's ever known.
It's so
in
hard
regards
to
to
see
her brother.
children hurting.
Yeah, yeah. And today, she's doing well. She's a yoga instructor. She's works for an IT company where she is doing very well there, and she still struggles. So and I've been able to be in a space now where before, I think Shannon, you mentioned this, that you were over caretaker. Before, I was up her butt like crazy. Like I couldn't even bear the thought of losing my daughter because I knew she was in a tough space. And I learned that what she needed from me was to be there and to listen. And anytime that I want to give advice, I ask her, what is it that you need from me? I love you. And I have this desire to want to fix this, and I know I can't. So what is it that you need from me? Do you need me to listen? Do you need me to brainstorm with you? Whatever. I'm here. And
That's
our
awesome.
relationship is beautiful. Yeah.
And that's something I've worked through with my daughter too, because now sometimes when she calls and just wants to vent about something, she says, I just want to talk about it. I'm not asking you for help. I just want to talk about it. So that helps too. So she's controlling my expectations. So we've had a discussion about like what I tend to do. I know I tend to do this, like try to fix it. And she tends to remind me, no, I just want to talk about it. I'm like, okay. So,
well, the other thing by listening is that you're giving them permission to grieve the way they need to grieve. Or even having a conversation of being, you're telling them. So this is what's been helpful for me. May not be helpful for you, but what's been helpful for me is that every time I go to fix something for someone else, I'm reminding myself is that what I'm doing is telling them that I don't believe that they can do it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so instead of just automatically going to it, I step back and say, what can I do to help you? Do you need my help? If
Mhm.
not, that's okay. Just know I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. For pleaser, somebody, that
exactly.
pleaser, it's like, it's
Yeah.
sometimes can be hard to do. All right. So as we wrap this up, I just want to share, I've got your website here. So folks can check out your website, CathleenElle.com, and your books. The other two, you've got The Shattered Together, A Mother's Journey from Grief to Belief, and Women Who Rise. You have a story in that, and Women Who Empower, and then there's others. I guess I
Yes.
missed or something.
No, I didn't put it down. It's Faces of Mental Illness, and then there's unconventional 101 ways to the unconventional success or something like that. I mean, like, and then I've got a chapter in one of Jack's books that is coming up.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
also want to just share that I am creating a program right now for women leaders who are ready to rise from the ashes of loss. I'm in the creation process. It should be done within the next month. So just watch out on social media. Get in contact with me. There, you can do a discovery call, free of
mhm,
charge, 30 minutes discovery call with me, just by connecting with me on my website.
awesome. Yeah, and then here's the LinkedIn, and then you've got Instagram and Facebook that is also Kathleen Elle Inspires.
That's
Right,
right. Yes. Thank
right.
you. I so appreciate this, and I love connecting with you, Emily, and your guests. I just really appreciate all of you for listening, and I hope you're able to take something from all of this.
Oh, definitely. And then this will be published as a podcast later too, so we'll have
Mhm.
even more listeners. So thank you very much for being my guest tonight, Kathleen.
Onward Live is sponsored by Emily Harmon Coaching and Consulting. Visit my website, emilyharmon.com, to learn more about me and my coaching programs. I'd love to help you create a life you love living. Remember, every adversity is our own personal university. Sometimes the lessons are difficult, and we must learn from our experiences. Vulnerability is your superpower. You are lovable and worthy. And we discuss these topics and more because professional is personal. Thank you for joining us and engaging with me and my guest. I look forward to seeing you next time.